Alright guys, Tactical Bit here, and today we're going to talk about Clayster. He has extended his contract with eUnited through to 2020, which seems a long way away. It probably is quite a long way away because it's likely to be the end of the 2020 season, that's what I'm assuming, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But actually, the start of 2020 is only like 14 months away, which is pretty crazy to think. Time goes by pretty quickly. Not the longest contract we have in Call of Duty, I'll talk about that a little bit more towards the end of the video. To start with, I wanted to give a little bit of a channel update. So, the last few weeks, since I've been back at university, I've pretty much been uploading when I can. I think I've done pretty well in the amount of uploads I've done, but it's kind of like maybe I'll upload 3 days in a row, then I won't upload for another couple of days, and it's kind of all over the place. So my plan is to upload a video every other day. So this may not be possible down the line because obviously towards the end of the first semester things are going to get increasingly busy with deadlines and all that sort of stuff. But at least if I set myself a target of being able to upload every other day, then if there's something busy or there's a busy week coming up, then I can make videos in advance to prepare, things like that. I may at some point have to drop it back to like 3 videos a week or something like that. Maybe I'll choose set days or maybe even 2 videos, I don't know. I've definitely got a fair few ideas lined up, but the news and the amount of things to talk about is probably going to die down in a few weeks as Vegas approaches, and even at this point it's still like 6 or so weeks away, right? So that's going to be the plan from now on. Today's a Monday, so I'll upload Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, etc, etc. That's what I'll try and do, and I'll try and stick to it. So I hope you guys are happy with that resolution. So Clayster re-signs his contract through to 2020, which is something of an interesting one. I think a lot of people would have seen this coming to some extent. So he's been with eUnited quite a long time now, ever since that gunless trade in the Infinite Warfare season when he gets swapped out right here. Been with them ever since, never quite reached the heights that he's used to in the past, but who knows. What does it mean for eUnited as an organisation? It's highly rumoured that next season we will be moving to a franchising system. And Clayster probably understands this is the way things are going, and he needs to be aware that eUnited are going to have the money behind them to get themselves a franchising slot. I think they'll have no problems at all because they probably already have some sort of backing going on. And even if they don't at the current time, I expect the roster they have this season to do really well, right? You've got J-Cap in, you've got a Bezian. I think it's a fantastic deal they've done effectively. And Pristini and Arstees as well, superb players in their own right. So I think for them at least, this move makes a lot of sense, keeping Clay for a long time. You can't get rid of Clay because as soon as you lose Clay, you lose the majority of your fans, or at least like 50% of your fans, go out the window to whatever team Clayster comes on after eUnited if you were to leave. And keeping him is a really big deal to building up the longevity of the fan base, because a lot of people that follow Clayster, now they're eUnited fans to some extent, they resonate with some of the things on social media. They like Pot Off, the general manager, or Burns of course that is. So it makes sense for eUnited's sake. And then we'll talk about Clayster a little bit. So Miner says here on Reddit, big yikes for me, gets downvoted a fair little bit. Then he goes into some really good explanation and he gets a lot of upvotes. He gets his karma back. So Miner says here, I get why he may have done it, but it's very risky. Assuming his 2 main motivations that he realizes he could be getting towards the end of his career, it's smart to secure a consistent income that he anticipates the recently inflated COD salaries are going to see a correction. So Miner makes a fair point here. Recently, I believe if you watch the most recent Spitfire episode, the guys talk about the incredible COD salaries some of these guys are getting. Zuma's salary according to the COD burner is upwards of 20 grand a month. The Optic guys apparently earn at least like 12 grand. And a lot of the North American players are asking a crazy amount of cash. And that's in part, 5v5 is one of the reasons, but in part, the reason why a lot of these organisations have had to call it quits. Something like Ghost Gaming, an organisation like Echo Fox, even Echo Fox have a lot of backing. It's like, it's not worth paying 8k a month for a relatively mediocre team when the return on investment is just not there right now. Now, Clayster tweets a lot about how he wants to get back to the top, he wants to win events, but maybe there's some element within him which, you know, he kind of realises that maybe he's past his best. He hasn't quite been the calibre of being the best AR in the game like he was in Advanced Warfare for, you know, a few years now. So maybe he realises, okay, it's just time to cash out. I want to win on the side, but considering the salaries we're seeing at the moment, if I can just stick with this organisation, keep the fan base, an organisation that he certainly likes, he gets along with the other players on his team, he likes the way things are run, he likes the general manager, and he can rake in a good salary as well, it makes a lot of sense for him to stay and extend the contract when he's in huge demand for eUnited to keep him because of the fan base situation. As Miner goes on to say, with franchising round the corner, it's very likely salaries will continue to inflate, which is possible. They talked about it on Spitfire that maybe the salaries as they're going right now, it's so difficult for an organisation, unless you're right at the top, unless you're winning events consistently and you're getting crazy sponsorship money, it's so hard to even make, like, to even break even in Call of Duty right now. If you're not placing top 3 at events consistently, you're probably losing money in COD due to the salary situation. So, I may talk about salaries in a separate video, but I'll touch on it a little bit now. Most organisations are making a loss in Call of Duty. The salaries as they are right now, probably way too high for what can be sustained over a long period of time. So either they're going to have to be toned back, which of course players aren't going to like, but it's probably necessary for the esport, or with franchising coming into play with a hell of a lot more investment from big sports franchises, like, I believe Miner goes on to say here that that eUnited were looking for investment by the Utah Jazz, which might be like an NBA team or something. So maybe that can keep the salaries high. Miner then goes on to say, assuming the contract runs to the end of the 2020 cycle. So let's talk a little bit how long this contract's actually going to be. 2020 starts in like 14 months, but I'm assuming that 2020 means, as Miner says here, towards the end of that yearly cycle. So Black Ops 4 cycle finishes in 2019, then whatever COD is next, maybe Modern Warfare 4 or something like that, that cycle ends in 2020. So I'm assuming he's going to be under contract with eUnited for the next 2 years. That would make sense. Clayster's reply to Miner, he doesn't say like, no, it's not until the end of the season. He just says he's not going to comment too in depth, but he has thought a lot about the kind of points that Miner brings up here. Miner goes on to say that he runs the risk of being stuck on eUnited. Now, I'm not sure this is necessarily the case. Do you really see Clayster becoming that hot property after the Black Ops 4 season? Sorry to say, but his trajectory over the last few games, in terms of his individual performance, has pretty much been downwards. eUnited this season, of course, they do get better results towards the end of the season with Felony, but you know, Clayster was a little bit better towards the end, but I honestly think it was Arcities doing most of the heavy lifting for this team. And if you compare Clayster to the ARs from the World War II season, Clay's down here at a 1.07. Methods, Slasher, Dashy, Octane, Formal, Assault, you know, Crim if he uses an AR, Rated's up there, Wuskin, right? All of these guys are, in my opinion, in greater demand than Clayster. Now, Miner may be right to some extent that he could be stuck on eUnited if someone really wants to buy him out for, you know, the fan base that he might bring along. But I think Clayster's probably happy with the salary he's collecting. And he thinks this team has good management and he thinks they've got a good chance of actually winning events, which of course is what everyone's here for. So Miner goes on to say that eUnited doesn't have the best funding, so it might not be at a franchise, but with Clayster's response that there's a lot of stuff about this that we've thought about. Trust me when I say there's stuff in place to deal with everything you've posted about. Stuff in place to deal with everything. Sounds like they've got franchising sorted, they've got the investment coming in, and he's pretty confident that they're going to get everything sorted out for the next season. What's Clayster going to do after 2020? That's the question, because let's say the next 2 seasons go pretty rough for him. He doesn't win an event. He's not one of the best assault rifles in the game as he has been in the past. Maybe they get close to a victory. What does he do in 2020? Because if eUnited want to keep him, then maybe he stays, maybe he keeps playing. But he has talked about in the past the potential of him starting a new organisation. I'm not sure where exactly he said it, but I'm pretty sure in the past he's mentioned his desire to some extent to do what Nadeshot's done. Retire, start his own organisation. He's also writing a book, I believe, like Memoirs of a Pro Gamer or something like that. So he's clearly got things planned after his time, after his playing days are over. An incredibly driven player, like he wants to win basically more than anyone. But maybe at some point he has to realise, you know, it's time to hang up the sticks here if it's not worth it anymore. So, at least for Clayster fans, because a lot of people have been thinking, oh, maybe Clay's on the verge of retiring, he's probably going to be sticking around for at least 2 more seasons, which is pretty good going considering he's basically the oldest pro we have in the scene. He'll be like 27, maybe 28 by the time the end of the Modern Warfare 4, whatever game it's going to be, by the time that season comes to a close. Before we finish out, I want to talk about the trends of contracts growing longer and longer, because with the salaries as we currently have it and with the esport maturing more and more per year, players and teams alike are realizing it actually makes sense as a job to just collect a salary. Because in the past, people have just competed for the sake of winning. But a lot of people, and let's talk about Toho right here from Giants, he signed a contract earlier this year until December 2023. So the Modern Warfare 4, whatever it's going to be, season ends in 2020. There's going to be a Sledgehammer game after that, then another Treyarch game, then on the next Infinity Ward game, at the end of that season and the start of the next Sledgehammer game, the 4th Sledgehammer game, then Toho's contract is going to run out. So, you know, he's been a standout player in Black Ops 3. People thought pretty highly of him. But he understands that he's never going to win an event, right, playing with these Spanish guys. Maybe they can get into the Pro League just about if they're lucky. But Toho's a big branding image for this Giants team. And signing a contract until 2023 basically secures a very solid income for the next few years, which is something we really haven't seen in Call of Duty to a large extent before. People deciding, okay, this is actually a job and let's just rake in as much money as I can from it before it potentially goes out the window or Activision move elsewhere and maybe Blackout takes over their priorities. So I think this is a trend you're likely to see more and more, rather than players hopping around all over the place, signing longer term contracts and saying, okay, I like this organization, I like the way it's run. And it makes sense to me from a career standpoint. Someone like Clayster, you know, 25, 26, 27, he might be thinking about, you know, wanting to start a family, these sort of ideas coming into play. And you don't want to try and make a step like that. And the similar situation might be here with Toho, because he's a pretty older guy as well in the scene. So a big consideration for the pros is something on the lines of, maybe I'm not going to win another Call of Duty event. Someone like Toho knows that's pretty much going to be the case. Clayster, of course, wants to win, but in the back of the mind, you know, he's not an idiot, right? He understands that, well, there's only 6 events this year. I've got a pretty good team, but there's a hell of a lot of other good teams that could potentially win an event. Maybe I shouldn't just be doing this anymore for the sake of just winning, right? And I think that's why the pros are trying to push up the salaries as much as possible, because they realise that, you know, this may not be around forever, and signing a longer term contract to try and guarantee some income so you can actually live to some extent a normal life is something that I think a lot of these guys are realising, wow, this is the way to go, rather than just being the 18-year-old kids who go along to LAN events because they want to win and talk shit on the teams they beat. So, like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think Clayster's going to do after 2020? After his contract's up, do you think he's going to keep playing? Do you think his level will have got to the point where it makes more sense for him to retire? Maybe even start his own organisation, which he's talked about in the past, which would be an interesting one considering he seems to like eUnited a lot, but then he's, you know, potentially creating a rival to eUnited. But of course, Nadeshot did the same with Optics, so we'll have to see how that goes down the line. So thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I'll see you next time.